So we'll have 3 papers in this session. We'll address mainly metrics, predictions. The first speaker will be Joe from University of Texas, Dallas. He's a PhD student, and he will present a paper about estimation of metrics for better reflected software structures. Right?
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you.
Maybe you should do that.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session and listen to our presentation. And I understand that it is already the last day of the conference, and you may be eager to go shopping or maybe sightseeing. So I know that. So I will try my best to squeeze my presentation and finish it maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes. And so that's all I can do. All right, so first of all, I would like to thank both the Beihang University and the University of Texas at Dallas for their technical and financial support. And I would also like to thank Professor Tunai from Beihang University and also Professor Eric Wang from the University of Texas at Dallas for their valuable advisory and also support. Well, that's the end of the on the record part, so it's sufficiently started now. So for today's presentation, I'm going to talk about our paper. The paper title is MACP Model for Quality Evaluation for Software Structure Based on Software Complex Network. Well, it's a long title, I can't remember that either. Okay, so our presentation. So for today's presentation, it contains 5 different parts. So the first one is the motivations, in which I will describe the motivation behind our research paper, and also about how we get the idea. And the second part is some of the previous studies related to ours, and also I will give you a little bit of the background knowledge that we're going to use in this presentation. And third part is methodology, which is the main part of the presentation. So here I will introduce the methodology of our research. And the fourth part is application, in which I will show you how to apply our technique to a well-known open source project. And the last part is the future works, which we will do or maybe not, depends on whether we can get any money for this. And then let's get to the first part, is our motivation. So let's imagine a scenario. So what are we going to do if you're not feeling well? For example, if you're having a headache or a stomach or maybe a high fever? Well, maybe for me or maybe most of us, we're going to go to a hospital because there are doctors and nurses who are very familiar with every scenarios and situations. They can take care of us. And we'll get to the hospital. The doctors will ask you a lot of questions, right? Such as what did you eat in the past few days, or how are you feeling now, and how did it happen, when did it happen? And also you're gonna take a lot of medical examinations or maybe health examinations. You will get a lot of reports which maybe cost you thousands of dollars if you don't have insurance. And with these reports, the doctors will have an idea what is going on. And he will tell you what you're going to do in the next few days, whether you need to take some medicines or it's a surgery or you just need to lie down and rest for a few days. Then suddenly one day it occurs to our mind that whether it is possible to apply the same principle to software engineering. Well, to us, the answer is yes. So in this picture, we can see a beautiful woman holding her baby, and I use this picture to represent the relationship between a software developer and their software system. So we all know that in every mother's eyes, their baby is gorgeous, is pretty, is clever, is flawless, right? And it is also the same case if it applies to software engineering. Once the developers, maybe after a month of endeavor or hard work, or maybe years, the developers finally can deliver their software systems. Everybody's very happy and excited because they are all confident about their product and they believe their product is perfect, is unbeatable. But however, bad things usually happen. So sometimes they may get sick. So in this case, the software may encounter some failures or other kind of faults, and etc., which stop the software from operating correctly and normally. In this case, a lot of engineers, software developers, maybe the testing teams and the quality assurance teams, and many other experts will need to examine what is going on here. And here I'm not only talking about bug reports, but also other evaluations such as maybe the structural evaluation, the reliability assessment, and all these kind of reports. And then based on these reports, the engineers will have an idea of how to proceed, whether we need to fix the bug or we need to re-implement some of the software, or we need to tear it down and start from the beginning. And our ultimate goal is to transform this poor little baby into a very strong man. In this case, we're trying to transform a software system into a mature, reliable, and robust software system. And this is our ultimate goal. And in this paper, we're trying to, just like what we're doing in hospital, we're trying to set up a set of evaluation thresholds or maybe evaluation standards for software structure, which can be used as a reference for software in industry to reference to see what is going on in their software and also tell them what the current stage of their software program is. Then the next part, I'm going to talk about some of the previous studies and also the background knowledge we're going to use in this presentation. First thing I would like to mention is that there exist various traditional structural measurements for software structures. For example, when it comes to the code complexity measurement, there exists maybe lines of codes or maybe the by-K cycle complexity and etc. And when it comes to spreading and robustness, we have degree and between centrality, and for modularity, the node density and partitioning. However, all of these traditional measurements suffers from two shortcomings. The first one is not universal or maybe not comprehensive. It is that usually in this metrics, for specific one metric, only one aspect of the program is considered. In this way, it is impossible for the engineer to get a whole idea of the current stage or the current status of their program. And the second one is that these metrics are not practical sometimes, because usually developers have no idea what the numbers means, because it lacks in the evaluation standards, because we only have a number and we don't know whether this number is good or not. In order to solve this problem, and we use the following technique to help us solve these shortcomings. The theory of complex network have been used widely in either the natural systems or artificial systems, such as maybe the transportation system or the electricity system, and it has been proven very successful, have drawn attention from both the academia and also the industry. And here on the left-hand side, we can see that there is a graph with a lot of nodes and also edges on it. It's kind of masked, right? And here we use, the nodes can be represented as the different software entities, such as the different classes, the functions, and also data structures. And the edges between those nodes represent the relationship between them. In this case, it can be data dependencies, control dependencies, or maybe function calls. And in our paper, we use nodes to represent the functions in the program, and the edges represent the function calls between them. In the next part, I will come to the methodology part. First, I would like to give you three highlights of our proposed technique. The first one is that we provide a three-tier evaluation model, which consists of three different levels of evaluation based on software structures. And the second one is we establish a set of evaluation thresholds or maybe evaluation standards for different types of software systems to act as a reference for engineer to see what the status of their software is. And then the third highlight is that we provide a structural evolution trend model, which is a observation made from all the case studies we have done in the previous, which can help us determine whether it is the software is in the initial development stage or it is already in the mature stage. Here in this slide, you can see that this is the overview of our model. It consists of three different levels. On the right-hand side is the basic measurements, which contains different types of basic measurements. So instead of jumping into each basic measurements individually, I think that is very time-consuming. So I'll just give you one short example. Maybe we can take the first one. It's a clustering coefficient. It measures the grouping of nodes within the software network. It can be represented as the how closely nodes are connected within a local small area or from a local perspective. If a software has a high clustering coefficient, we can see that it can be easily modularized and it can be partitioned into different modules, and it will be easier for the engineers to understand and do the follow-up. And then with all of these basic measurements, we will come up with 4 different integrated measurements. Here is modularity, hierarchy, complexity, and fault propagation. So we just use propagation for short for that. With all of these 4 integrated measurements, we'll come up with the overall evaluation, which gives you a it will give you an overall of your quality of the structure of the program you are developing. So we'll get to the integrated measurements and overall evaluation in the next few slides. And here in this slide, I'm going to talk about the 4 integrated measurements, the 4 aspects. The first one is modularity. We use modularity to evaluate how easily the software can be modularized and whether it is manageable for implementation and maintenance. Usually high modularity usually means that the functionalities are reasonably dispersed within the scope of software, and it can be easily divided into several modules, and as a result, the engineers will have a better idea of how this system is and how it works, and as a result, it will be easier for them to do the follow-up, to do the further future implementation, and also for the future maintenance. And the second aspect is hierarchy. A good hierarchical design always shows that it can be viewed as a multi-layer structure, and the network of a software system with a good architecture design can usually be viewed as this kind of structure. And this structure has been proven to be more efficient and a better design for information flow within the software system. The third aspect is complexity. So I think this is the easiest one for us to understand. The more complex the software is, the worse it is. So we use that if it has lower complexities, that it has higher degree of structural quality. And the last one is fault propagation. We use this to represent the impacts brought by faults. If it has a high propagation, it means that the faults within one function is harder to propagate to another function. And these are all the 4 integrated measurements. And with all of these 4 measurements, MHCNP, we can use the formula listed above. OE equals omega 1m plus omega 2h plus omega 3c plus omega 4p to get the overall evaluation. We can use the following matrix to get the 4 coefficients. For example, and each entry in this matrix represents the relative importance between the 2 criteria. For example, when it comes to the KHM, it means that it represents the relative importance of H when comparing to M. And also in this paper, we just use all of these 4 coefficients equally. However, this does not indicate that our technique can only be applied in this way. And in the future studies, we will try to assign different values to different types of softwares in order to make it more applicable and customizable for different types of software systems. Then, bear this knowledge in hand, we can get the evaluation thresholds, which is one of the main contributions of this paper. Here I only listed the overall evaluation thresholds, which has listed in the second column, and all the 4 integrated thresholds for 4 types of different software systems. Here I just leave out all the basic measurements, because if we just leave all the 12 here, it would be a mess, and it is difficult for us to get an idea of our research. We can see that here we established the evaluation standards or evaluation thresholds for different types of applications here. It's just like what we're doing when we're in the hospital doing the health examination. Maybe, for example, when you're in a hospital, you do a health examination. The doctor says that maybe in US there is standard for the class 0 is 130. If you reach 140 or 50 or maybe 200, the doctor says that, well, you need to focus on more on the diet, you need to exercise more, you need to take less fat. And this is kind of like the same thing. So here, maybe take an example for the database. If your modularity of your software being designed is higher than the threshold indicated in this table, it means that your design is good. However, if your number is way lower than this one, it says that there is some issue behind this and you need to put more energy and focus on this one. And also the basic measurements can also give you more hints on how you can improve your structure. And also we noticed that I included different types of software systems here because we believe that the different type of software system can have significantly different structures. So it is really impossible for us to gain a unique set of evaluation standards to cover all of them. So we just divided them into different types and different categories and select only those stable versions of well-known systems to help us establish these evaluation thresholds. And also with respect to the stable versions, we have a very detailed procedure which makes all of these numbers statistically reliable. So if you're interested in this, you can take a look at the paper, so I will not jump into these details. Then we'll come to the fourth part, which I will use our technique to a well-known application, which is gedit. I think we all know that. Here I will give you 4 figures. Instead of giving you all the basic measurements here, I only include these 4 figures, which are for modularity, hierarchy, complexity, and propagation, which are the 4 integrated measurements. So let's take a closer look at one of them. The first one is the modularity. So we can see that in the initial stage, in the beginning stage, the modularity is pretty low, and after a version, maybe a version 43, and it increases dramatically, and then after that, most of the versions are above the evaluation threshold, which is indicated by the red line. We can also take another look at the complexity. Complexity is kind of different from the modularity, which in this case, the complexity is really high in the beginning stage, and then with more functions added into the application, the complexity decreases and remains in a relatively low level. And after that, after version 75, it increases, and for most of the versions after that, it is above the evaluation, also indicated by the red line. So with all of these 4 figures, we can get the overall evaluation. So here I only, due to time limit, I only put the gedit and also another application, Spring, which is a game engine, which is a well-known game engine here. So we can see that, so we can take gedit as an example. We can see that in the initial stage, before maybe version 9, the overall evaluation, the values for this is really high. And then until version 64, the overall evaluation decreases dramatically. And then after that, from 64 to 93, it increases, and after that, it remains in a relatively stable. Range. And I think the similar trend can also be observed from Spring, and also many other applications we have observed. And so now we're wondering whether there is a common fundamental theory behind this. So in the next page, I'm going to talk about this observation we're making. So here we're dividing the software development stages in development phase into 4 distinguished stages. So the first one is the initial stage. Well, in this stage, only the key functionalities are implemented. In this case, the complexity is pretty low, and also the modularity and hierarchy, and also for propagation is pretty high. In this case, the overall evaluation is higher. However, when it enters into the development stage, a lot of other functions are added in a relatively short period of time. And then engineers are more focusing on implementing different functionalities. And in this way, the complexity increases dramatically, and engineers may not focus that much energy on whether to improve the quality of their structure. As a result, in this stage, the overall evaluation decreases dramatically. And then in the next stage is the fluctuation stage. In this case, more functionalities are also added. However, the engineers are starting to focus on their quality of their structure, and also many other issues resided in their software. As a result, the overall evaluation fluctuated for several iterations. And then in the last stage is the stable stage. In this stage, the overall evaluation fluctuates in a relatively small range, which means that the software has been tested by a lot of users and engineers, and also it has been used widely, and it is mature and ready to be delivered. So we believe that this kind of model is very useful for engineers to understand what the current stage of their software and whether it has become mature and whether it is to be used in a wider range. So I think that's the end of our presentation. And oh, sorry. So there's the last one. I almost forgot it. So here I'm going to talk about some of the future works we may do. The first one is that we will determine the set of coefficients for the overall evaluation with respect to different types of software systems. And the second one is more case study to demonstrate the evolution of software structures. And the third one is that we will include more evaluation attributes into our model to make it more applicable and comprehensible in a wider scope. So that's the end of the presentation. And thank you. I'm open for questions now.
Okay, thank you. We have time for questions. Please.
These are pretty much all structural metrics, and you referred to a graph at the beginning. But it seems to me that not all of them can be measured that way. For example, P, the propagation one, could not. The complexity or hierarchy doesn't seem to be measurable directly by a dependency graph. How did you actually measure the structural metrics?
Thank you for your question. And with respect to the basic measurements based on this complex network, I would like to mention that it is possible for us to measure that only based on the software networks. For example, when it comes to the propagation, there is one attribute is efficiency. It represents the average level of function calls within a software program, and the deeper it is, the more impacts will be brought by the software faults. So we use efficiency, which is brought from the theory of complex network to measure the impact of propagation. And also the same thing also applies to hierarchy and also the modularity and the complexity.
Okay, can I try asking it another way? You have source code. How do you measure this? I mean, you take a tool and do something. What do you look at?
Yes. So with the source program, we have our own tool to help us generate the software network, and we have all of these metrics. And based on these metrics, we can get all the basic measurements, and also based on the basic measurements, we get integrated measurements. They have been completely automated.
Yes, please, one question.
More about practical side. So have you provided your metrics to real developers and ask them to adjust the implementation?
Actually, all of our data are collected from open source project from the GitHub, and all of our data are actually practical. And we still haven't applied this to some of the ongoing project, but maybe this is the next step we're going to do. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, in your evaluation application experiments, and I see the version ID is continuous number, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you to try to find whether there's a big version update or small version update in this version IDs?
Actually, we're in the current stage. We're not focusing on any of the two versions beside each other because now we're focusing more on the evolution trend of of their numbers. But maybe in the next step, we'll dive more into the source code level and see what is going on between these kind of things. Because in the next step, we're going to focus on. So here we see that there is a great leap in the modularity, and then maybe for some of the software has low modularity, then maybe this can be act as a reference for them about how to leverage their modularity.
And you propose a model to predict the trend of
Yeah.
the structure.
Yeah.
And have you to verify whether it's correct or not? With
Actually,
data?
actually, we have already evaluated this is on most of our applications, and maybe for more than 60% of them, these show similar symbols, but maybe for some of them it does not. So this may due to the coefficients we set to the MHCP. Yeah, so we're going to put more energy on this and so maybe create a more uniform or maybe a more comprehensive prediction model for this one. Thank you.
Yes, we still have time for questions.
The matrix, the value matrix is the average of the file. Maybe this figure shows at the initial stage, as the project have maybe 100 files, but the stable stage, there's maybe the 1,000 or more files. So the evaluation is based on the average of files, I think. So this is not this sorry, this so not normal. So I think this is a normal idea. I think so. Oh, sorry. I have a question about the matrix of this evaluation is average of files or another value.
Okay, so you have a question about how to get this this curve. Actually, we're getting this curve from based on the overall evaluation we have got from the previous steps, based on all the other previous stable and also well-known software systems, and we're also based on the first few versions of a specific software system. And so we can, for a specific software system, we can draw this kind of curve, and we see that for most of them, it's kind of fit this curve. And at least it fits the trends of this curve.
Maybe this figure depends on the file size or file number of files, I think.
The number of files.
I think he's questioning this trend. Stable behavior is a little bit lower and the complexity, while he's expecting to have a higher complexity. And this is what, if I rephrase your question, because we have a higher number of files, and so whether this averages, this score is averaged over the number of files or takes into account the number of files?
Is the overall evaluation is just for one single project. It contains all the files, and we're not talking about any individual file or the number of files.
No, but if you have 100 files in the beginning and then 10,000 at the end.
Yeah, we have already kind of standardized all the numbers.
Yeah, but okay.
But, sorry, the point is that what you could be plotting there is just the variance.
Yeah.
So as the files increase, your variance just drops down. Maybe a reflection of that, maybe not. Which is,
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So we're gonna take a closer look at that. Thank you.
Another thing I think I was missing in your description of possible future work is actually looking at how much of each and every single one of the components that you actually include into your formula, MHCP. I think you took a quarter of each. Because when looking at cyclomatic complexity, for instance, and other measures, they all come up with a value in the end and say, well, worse than 23, you're good, or lower than 23 you're good, higher you're bad. So how do you actually know that your formula is producing a good measurement?
Actually, we're using the approach to evaluate our thresholds by using a lot of well-known and often with high-quality software systems to help us get the thresholds. And we believe that with the stable versions of these well-developed and high-quality softwares, we believe that the thresholds we're getting is pretty reasonable for most of the applications.
Do you have any evidence about the correlation between the thresholds and the proneness of these software for containing defects? Because I mean, this is a good threshold, means that higher threshold
Yeah,
will lead to more faults in the
yeah.
softness, what we want to avoid.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, we do have another paper already published about the distribution of faults and maybe the location of the nodes. And we've already got that published, and now we are also putting more energy on this part to see whether there is some relationship between the different measurements and also with the different bugs or faults.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.